Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to view Swimfan, currently available on Hulu, Hulu. So, what is Swimfan about? Well, Swimfan is to kind of go on and kind of be tied to that old saying, wham bam, thank you ma'am, because you've gone on and just completely annihilated and destroyed my life, and now I'm going to have to pick up the pieces within an hour and 24 minutes. Because that, of course, is the runtime of this movie. Fairly short film. I think it ends up kind of like, it's really good, especially if you've seen it like the first time around. How this movie ends up playing out is we have a girl named Madison who is to be a new girl to this school, because we always have to have that cliche-ish like approach to a story where it's like, hey, how is it that all of a sudden Ben's character is going to have an affair? Oh, there just has to be this new student that comes in that is just to shake his foundation forever for some goofy reason. Because Madison is to go on and figure out a way to first meet up with Ben, and then Ben's story is that, of course, he is to already have a girlfriend named Amy, and it seems like things are going so well in that department to where Amy is carving out where Ben and Amy's future is going to head. And Ben is like, whoa, hold your horses. Like, this is a lot to think about. And also, Ben is getting a lot to think about with him planning out his whole entire life, where we have Ben, who is also getting pressured by Coach Simpkins to say, it's like, well, hey, like, this is just like the entire rest of your life, and you better go on and give me some like Olympic kind of swimming, because like you need to produce something here to wow these scouts. And more we start to see Ben crumble and fold. And then on top of that, Ben is also cheating on Amy with Madison within all of this. To where all of a sudden Ben is to hope that this girl Madison, after this one occurrence, is to leave him alone, because Ben is far too busy to deal with anything new in his life right now. It's almost kind of like Cable Guy in a way, where like we have Ben's character who is trying to eventually like get rid of this character, but the character keeps figuring out a way to mess with the main character's life. Having Ben realize that Madison is smothering him with emails and messages and whichever, to the point of her sending some provocative photos, let's just say. And Ben is going on and realizing how quickly this girl is to go on and escalate. If she's not going to get what she wants, then it seems that she's going to go on and start poking through Ben's life and to start eliminating things to have Ben all to Madison's self. And that creates for a very interesting story, and I'll talk about it more once we get into spoilers. So with that said, this movie is also an hour and 24 minutes, so there's a reasoning for me to be very vague as I possibly can here to kind of go into the teeing up part of this film. So how did I feel about this movie? I still feel like this movie holds up. I think that it also is a quick movie. For those of you that may not go on and like it, at least it's only an hour and 24 minutes. It's not like something, it's like, man, I thought that this movie was so awful, and like, I wish it was even shorter than what it was. Like, some people may not go on in like cheating films or obsession kind of films, but I just stumbled upon this film and I'm like, okay, like, let's check this out again. So I thought that this movie was like a like, I would say it's a solid, good movie. I think the only goofy thing about it is the way that the movie ends. I think that they honestly should have ended the movie with both Ben and Amy looking out at that pool, and that's how the movie should end. Because the two scenes that end up being placed after the movie are so quick, and I'm like, okay, those scenes don't make any sense. To where I'm just like, okay, this is weird. One thing that I also noticed is that we have Ben's truck that at some point in this movie has a broken light on it, but then for the rest of the film, the light works. And so I guess somehow once they started to rent out this truck, they must have finally got money to repair this part to then fix the truck and have all the lights be lit on this truck. And I guess for continuity, they just went on. It's like, well, no one's going to notice the truck. But so, other than that, yeah, I thumbs up this movie. I know people don't like affairs and whatever and cheating but like I think that this is an interesting movie. We also have that really great line that Erica does deliver, and hopefully I'll be able to get to that because that's the most like cool line of this movie where like we start to really see Madison is really going full crazy by the end of the film. And so let's go on and let's double fire this bad boy up because it's about that time to just go on into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time to spoil this movie. So, in the very beginning of the film, we of course have Ben and Amy who are in this car going at it, and there is to be this car that drives by that may or may not have noticed them two going at it. And so that tells you right away that Ben does have already a girlfriend, and so Ben and Amy are to be very lovey-dovey. They're very public affection-y. They kiss one another consistently. And so Ben and Amy are... Ben keeps showing up at Amy's job, talking about future things. And so Ben and Amy are to, of course, have a moment where they start to realize that Ben is eventually going to one school and Amy's going to another, and the distance between those schools are going to be very great. And so Ben ends up going on and giving Amy a gift to hopefully lead to Amy realizing it's like, you're just doing this just to get laid. And Ben is like, well, is it working? And Amy's like, oh, okay. So Ben is to go on to try to get some laps into the pool. And we have Coach Simpkins who is going on and telling Ben, like, hey man, like how are the laps going? Like make sure you're really practicing hard because like this is just your whole life, right? Like scouts are coming to look at you and only you. And Ben's like, yeah, that's great and all of this and that. So we have Ben that is go on and bump into Madison, who needs help trying to get into her locker. And so Ben is to come to find out that instead of just using the combination to open up this locker, instead Ben just takes this bobby pin away from Madison and is to open up the locker using that. And so Madison is tell Ben, it's like, well, hey, how do you know how to do that? And Ben is like, well, yeah, I've had a past, which eventually he goes into later on in this film. So Ben is talking to Madison, and he, of course, is to realize that she's the new girl in school. He's never seen her before. Madison is like, oh, is that obvious? And Ben is like, yep. So what eventually happens is when Ben and Madison, at some point, uh, Ben is to be looking off to the side, and then he's looking at the road, and almost runs Madison over. And so Ben is like, "Oh my God, Madison! Like, I didn't realize you were on the road. I thought I saw somebody familiar, and now you're here. I'm sorry." So Ben is to go on and want to drive Madison home. So what ends up happening is Ben is to drop Madison off at her place, and come to find out, Ben is to realize that Madison had left her notebook, and Ben is like, should I look at this notebook? Should I not look at this notebook? I'm curious. So Ben goes on to, of course, open up this notebook to realize that this notebook has music notes in it. And at some point while Ben is thumbing around, he ends up seeing the word BC on it. Really, we could probably accumulate to that being Ben Cronin, who ends up being coincidentally BC. But I would also like to just say that, like, Madison didn't already know this guy was like, this guy. And I would like to think that it's actually meant to be bass clef, which is actually to be a musical thing. I only know that because I was in band at one point, and I would have to switch between not only treble clef but bass clef for an instrument, and man, was that a pain in the butt, because of course, like, I would have no clue on how to do a certain kind of either treble clef or bass clef, because I had played the trumpet, and then I went on to eventually switch to play the baritone. And the baritone, of course, like, there's certain music where it's treble clef, there's certain music where it's bass clef, and there's certain things where I can't read it. So it's just like, wow, this is fun. So that's when I just started to be like, you know what? Like, this music isn't easy enough for me to get anymore. It's becoming too difficult, and so I just decided my senior year to just be like, you know what? Like, I'm just gonna be done with band, because I'm definitely not as good as other people anyway. So, like, I just kind of left my senior year. I felt bad about it, but I went on to just decide, like, yeah, this just isn't for me anymore. But so Ben is to eventually call Madison at her place. It seems that Madison have a mother that is to go on and be quite upset with Madison having a caller on his phone. So this woman is to go on and tell Madison that it's like, oh, it's a boy calling. And so Madison ends up picking up the phone. Like, who is it? Who could it be? It, of course, is Ben. Somehow Ben ended up getting Madison's phone number for some goofy reason. Maybe he went on to eventually find out through the people of the school, like, hey, what's her digits, man? So Ben goes on and is to tell Madison that he, of course, has her notebook, and that he wants to go on and give this back to her. So Madison is to be waiting for Ben by her place, and so Ben is going on wearing all like these nice clothes and nice pants and nice shoes. I already said nice clothes, so I thought I would say shoes, even though you can't really see them because pants up. Anyways, so Ben is to go on and talk to his mother, Carla. And Carla's like, well, hey, like, why are you wearing such nice clothes? And Ben is just like, what? You can't wear anything nice? So Ben goes on to Madison's place, and we've already had at one point where Ben's friends, who were to be like the swim team, was a guy named Josh, had already given a guy named Christopher Dante crap before, because both of them just don't really like one another. And it seems that Josh is to be pining away for Madison. And so Josh is asking Ben, it's like, well, hey, do you think I have a shot with this girl? And Ben's like, but like her brother is actually this Christopher guy, and Josh even finds that out. And so yeah, so Ben then goes on to go to this place where Christopher is to be this girl's brother. So Christopher is trying to go on and talk to Ben and say, like, hey, I can just take this notebook so that way you won't waste your time. And Ben is like, well, yeah, but I'd like to go on and just kind of like do this myself if I can. So all of a sudden, Madison is to be walking off to this like balcony and is to say to Christopher, it's like, hey, Christopher, like, why didn't you tell me I had guests? So that tells you that Christopher should just shut up and let Madison do what she's going to do. So Christopher leaves, Madison leaves the house because she is to say that it is stifling. What vocabulary that we have to use for these characters. So Ben and Madison are to go on to this restaurant to have at some point where Ben is to finally break down why he, of course, has this dark past. Where Ben, of course, had at some point done drugs and eventually had went to rehab for it. And come to find out, Ben was to realize that he was to go on and be stuck cleaning the pool for this mental hospital, and come to find out that he was swimming into the pool more so than he was cleaning it. And for some weird goofy reason, Ben had to go on and clean that pool. I don't know why. Like, it seemed like he was more working there than he was like being rehabilitated there. Maybe there was some kind of weird goofy thing there where like if you work in the facility you can also pay off your rehab dues. I don't know, like maybe like considering Carla is to be this doctor, maybe they worked something out. I don't know, that just seemed weird. But so Ben is to go on here and is to tell Madison that he has a girlfriend, and he wants to let Madison know, it's like, hey, I have a girlfriend, like, please, like, don't think that I'm trying to, like, try to get with you. And Madison's like, well, hey, like, don't even think about it. Like, Madison goes on and mentions that she has a boyfriend who is to be in New York, and Madison is to say that this guy's career is to go off so well that they're even looking at him for the New York Mets. And Ben is like, the Mets? Like the Mets? Like the New York Mets? And Madison's like, yeah, that team. And Ben is like, oh wow, like this guy is like really something. So Madison goes on and says that her and this guy's relationship, who we go on to find out, is to actually be Jake Donnelly. And luckily I didn't even have to look that up. So Madison is to say that between the two of them, there is to be an open relationship, but she is to eventually make her way back to Jake, supposedly. Come to find out, we find out that Jake, yeah, his story is to, of course, really be not as good as Madison is to make it out to be. So we have Ben and Madison who are to like really just say, it's like, well, hey, let's go on and just be friends here. And Ben is to even want to like call it a night, but Madison is telling Ben, it's like, well, you know what, like, I'm not ready to leave yet. Like, I'm not ready to call it a night. But so, like, Ben is like, well, where do we go next? So, Madison and Ben go off to this pool because I guess everybody can just go to this pool. It's like the easiest thing to access. And, like, anybody can just come into this pool like nobody's business. Maybe like certain swim team members are given like special keys. Like there's certain times where you go on and you have like stories of like Dave Bautista was to eventually get easy access to be able to go into these weightlifting parts of his school, and like so Dave could really focus like a lot of time on just going to doing weightlifting, because like he would like ditch class and go on to the weightlifting or the gym and whatever and just lift weights and whatever, and so like that's what he just liked to do, and he just really ballooned up. So Ben and Madison go on to this pool and Ben starts swimming. And eventually, by the time that Ben makes this one other side of the pool, we find out that Madison has all of a sudden disappeared, it seems. So Ben is to go on and be like, hey, where did she go? All of a sudden, Madison has made her way into this pool with only her underwear, let's just say, on. Her undies. Her undergarments. Yes, let's say that. So Madison is to go on and be with Ben in this pool, and come to find out, Madison is to tell Ben that she does not know how to swim, so maybe Ben can right now go on and teach her. So Ben is to go on and tell her the first thing to do is for her to learn how to float. Come to find out, Madison doesn't really use that skill later on in the film. Because of course she doesn't. Like, because I went on and I was to be taught in school that, hey, like, because they go on and they force you to put, like, a shirt and pants on and jump into the water and tell you, like, okay, like, now you're gonna have to go on and, like, survive in the water. And then eventually they go on and like make you go into the deep end and like, okay, you need to survive and everything like that. But so the thing that they end up telling you to do is they end up telling you to like with your like whole wardrobe on, like figure out a way to float, and with that eventually you can swim kind of your way. But also they train you that it's like, okay, now you can't just go on and float, just kind of like be like in the water and have all these clothes on, and then you're going to start to feel that you're going to start to eventually start to sink a little bit, and figure out a way to consistently just kind of kick your feet and stay up. So like they teach you all of that in class, but I guess Madison went to the school where there wasn't that. So that is what it is. Or maybe during one of these years, upon any number of these classes, eventually they'll teach her how to swim. Anyways, pushing on. Unless she went to, like, homeschool, then when would you ever learn how to swim? Anyways, pushing on. So, but this goes on to the more important part with, of course, Ben and Madison being on one side of the pool, and Madison is now hugging on to Ben, and they're lip locking, and we have Madison saying like, well, hey, I can just keep this a secret. This will be our little secret, as well as it not being so little. And so Madison is to go on and eventually be with Ben, and eventually having Madison tell Ben, it's like, tell me you love me. Like, you don't have to mean it, just kind of tell me. So Ben goes on and of course does tell Madison that she does, or that he does love her, even though he technically doesn't mean it because of what happens next. So Madison and Ben like, it seems that we're gonna have this moment of like, hey, yeah, we're gonna be just friends and everything's gonna be fine. Yeah, not so much. So we have Ben that is to start to more and more create distance between him and Madison because Ben is slammed with him needing to go on and practice for his swim meet, and Ben is not focused, and that Ben is to also even blow off Amy, who is to have this party at her house, and her parents are going to be gone for a week, and Josh, of course, is excited about this. He's like, heck yeah, let's have a party. So Ben then goes on to Amy's party, and it seems that Ben ends up going to Amy's party to realize that Madison is there, and Ben is to go on and give Amy these flowers because Amy ended up giving Ben this card, and so eventually when Ben goes to Amy's party, Amy is to be talking her head off about Ben to Madison, and Madison is to say to Ben, it's like, oh, I know so much about you now because Amy keeps talking about you, as Madison is to have Amy's flower in her hair. So Ben is to be very uncomfortable and very, like, awkwarded out by Madison being at this party. And so when Ben is to take a dump or whatever he does in another room, he then comes out to see Madison right there. And so Madison is to go on and say to Ben, as she is to start to, like, stretch and do all these things, we have Madison going on and saying to Ben, it's like, well, hey, yeah, like, Amy can have you now, but, like, when am I gonna have my time with you, Ben? And Ben is like, yeah, about that. It's like, you do realize that, like, that night was what it was, but. And so Madison's like, oh, so, like, so that's it? Like, that's all? Like, that one night was what it. And Ben is like, yes. So Madison is to eventually continue to bother Ben, even to the point where Ben is kind of doing some homework and is to be very busy. Madison is all of a sudden swarming Ben's message slash email thing with a number of things to go on and ask Ben about certain things and whatever. But also, we have Ben chatting with Madison. Madison's like, well, hey, like, Madison won't know about like what we did, and like I don't think that she knows. And Ben is just like, well, yeah, like I have homework, I'm busy, and Madison ends up logging off, and she's upset, obviously. So, plus also we had a moment at that party where Madison had mentioned to Ben that she had left her underwear in Ben's car, and Amy is going on and wanting to take Ben's truck to go on this video run, which is like, okay, why are they going to grab a video? Was there some like video night that they were going on and planning because they had nothing better to do? So Amy goes on and takes Ben's car, and Ben is to try to stop Amy because realizing the underwear is in the car. So Ben is like, no, I'll go on, I'll do it, I'll leave you at this party because you're the host anyways, or whatever he ends up kind of justifying to Amy here. So, but now that Amy is starting to get upset, here's where the twists start to turn, as we are to go on and say very cryptically, as saying, it's gonna hit the fan. So Ben then is to have this doctor, this kind of hospital job. That's what I wanted to say. Hospital job. Ben is to go on and take certain medications to certain people, and so one of his patients is to go on and be asking for, of course, a woman to come and see him. And Ben is like, well, yeah, but there's no one in your age bracket. I'm sorry. And so, because Ben makes this thing about him like being pressured and because there's scouts coming, and the patient is going to tell Ben, it's like, well, like, I thought you meant like Girl Scouts. So, like, that guy is really creepy, though. That sounds really weird. But then Ben is like, well, yeah, there's no girls for you here beyond your age bracket. But Ben then passes his patient some playing cards that has uh, some ladies on it. I think there was to go on and be like some movie. I think it was called like Old Dutch or something like that, where there's this one movie where the guy who ends up playing Al Bundy from Married with Children ends up having this road trip with this kid. And eventually, at some point, we have this kid who ends up coming into these playing cards. And I was like, it kind of reminded me of that movie. I don't remember exactly what that movie was, um, but I thought that that movie was really funny. Uh, at the end of the movie, there's to be this gun that this kid has that ends up being like fired, and then there's a dart that ends up hitting somebody in the head. I think that's what happens in the film. It's been such a long time since I've seen that movie. Uh, but I also think every time that I eat the dill pickle Dutch chips, I think I end up thinking about that movie for some weird reason. Connection of words. Anyways, pushing on. So Ben ends up going on to taking this medication to his patients, and one of them ends up almost dying and flatlining here, and Ben starts freaking out. He's like, oh my god. So because Ben is to go on and blow off this patient this time around, and the guy ends up croaking, and Ben's like, oh my god, like the one time that I kind of was like in such a rush to just give this guy this pill and walk off, he died. So come to find out, Ben somehow was to get his medication switched with people, and it almost killed this patient. And so Ben's mother, Carla, and this uh, this kind of higher up like person is to be talking to Ben, and it's to go on and mention here. It's like, well, yeah, Ben, we're gonna have to let you go because like, so wait a minute, like, so one time that this guy ends up giving people the wrong medication, you you fire him? Wow, like in any other job you would go on and like write a person up or something like that, but they just go on and like, yeah, you're donezo. Any other job there'd be like a plethora of paperwork you'd have to make, like a number of times that this guy would have had to have been late to work, so on and so forth, until you finally decided like, yeah, like this person is not working out, or otherwise you would have a person like sue for wrongful termination for whatever reason. But so Ben is to now be out of a job, and Ben naturally assumes that this had to be somehow tied to Madison. Somehow she had to have gone on and done this. So Ben finds Madison, who's playing with her cello, as she has gone on and told Ben her playing with her cello, as she was mentioning that she like she likes music and she plays the cello. Uh, Not like the guy from Big Bang Theory, which he plays the cello also. But anyways, so Ben is to grab Madison on the neck, and Ben is to tell Madison, it's like, well, hey, like stop what you're doing. Like someone almost ended up dying, and so you need to like stop whatever you're doing. You need to stop seeing me. You need to stop being around me. Like I'm done. And so Ben is to move on, and think that everything is going to finally go away. Yeah, not so much. So it seems like Amy isn't really in this movie enough to where we have to really focus on Ben and Madison for a whole good chunk of this film. And so Ben was, of course, to get these racy pictures from Madison at one point through all these emails that she had spammed the crap out of him. And so while Ben is looking at these pictures at Madison with nothing on but it seems that a camera, Amy all of a sudden is walking in to ask Ben about, like, well, hey, like, my parents are away. Do you want to come to my house and, like, we can go on and we can get busy? If you know what I mean? So Ben is to go on and say, like, well, like, you know what? I'm very, like, I'm very pressured right now. I have a lot of things going on. Like, that has to just go on and be a no. Especially tonight. And Amy's like, well, what about tomorrow? I was like, So Amy is going on and telling Ben, it's like, well, is it the meat? Like, maybe if you go on and get some, like, stress relief, maybe you'll go on and feel better about this. And Ben's like, I don't know. Because we, of course, have Coach Simpkins, who is breathing down Ben's neck. And Coach Simpkins is going on and telling Ben, it's like, well, hey, I don't know what kind of swimming you're doing out there, but it's not Olympic swimming, Ben. And so while Ben is even talking to this coach, like, his pager is going off and he's looking at it. And Coach Simpkins is like, well, hey, like, whatever is going on with your girlfriend over there, fix it. Like, whatever's going on with you over there, fix that up. like, dude, this is eating up your life. So corral it, if you know what I mean. So Ben is to continue to go on, and eventually what ends up happening is Ben is to take this whiz test before this meet, and never knew that was a thing in high school sports to take a whiz test. Like, I didn't know that this was a pro sport for some reason. But swimming must be very different. So Ben is to go on and have his coach pull him aside. And so Coach Simpkins is telling Ben, I'm sorry, Ben, but you're off the meet because your test tested positive for steroids. We can't have steroids in the school, Ben. And Ben is like, what? So all of a sudden, Ben is looking at Josh. And Ben is saying to Josh, is like, you helped her. And Josh is like, what? Because come to find out, when Ben is to be doing laps, he all of a sudden is to pop his head out of this pool to see that now Madison is now with Josh. And that Madison is also wearing these very tight clothes. And she's lip locking with Josh. And also we have Randy, who I've gone on and seen him in a movie that was to be called Good, DICH, which I actually thought was a really decent film, but at the end of the day, people could have different feelings about it. Plus, it's also a very time period piece, because we go on and deal with, like, movie rentals and all kinds of stuff. It is what it is. So Randy's going on and asking Madison, it's like, well, hey, did Josh talk about me? And Madison's like, well, yeah, like, he talked about you. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. Because, of course, we probably really want Randy's character to try to get as many lines as he possibly can to have talking parts in here, so it's, like, good. Like, I got, like, X number of lines in this movie. Or eventually they probably had to, like, in the moment, they probably like, okay, like, let's continue to give this guy lines and just kind of play this out. So Ben is accusing Josh of being in cahoots with Madison, and Josh ends up getting so frustrated that he pushes Ben off into this pool, and there is to be a loudspeaker going on reminding everybody that Ben is not involved in this swim meet. It's like, okay, we could probably figure that out. So Ben is to realize that, like, Madison is probably messing up every bit of this man's life. So we have Ben that gets to such a point that he desperately goes on to now look into Madison by having Ben sneak into her place to go through her stuff, and is to find out that this girl is keeping a box with Ben, and that she has, like, clipped out all these newspaper clippings and stole one of his goggles. Like, she's keeping trophies of this guy, and she's also, like, in some ways almost photoshopping herself into photos that Ben and, I guess, Amy were to actually be in. So Christopher is to go and realize that Ben is in this girl's room, and so Christopher is to help this guy out. And so Christopher goes on and gives Ben this box, and is to tell him to get the heck out of here. So Ben sneaks out of this guy's place, and Madison is to knock on Ben's door and ask Christopher here if he's having guests. And Christopher's like, no. And Madison's like, well, of course not, because of course then you would have friends. And I'm like, oh, snap. That is awful. I feel bad for this Christopher guy in this film, because he gets treated like crap throughout the whole film. What? That's gotta suck. A role where you're going on and get treated like dirt through the whole film. So Christopher then goes on with Ben after Ben is to look through this box and to see this Jake Donnelly guy here, who of course is to be Madison's previous lover. That it was to be the New York Mets hopeful and everything like that. So Christopher is to take Ben to this hospital that Jake is to be held at. Because come to find out, Ben is to realize that Jake is in a coma. That's how bad this guy's life has spiraled out of control. And so we have this nurse that is to bizarrely tell Ben about Madison, and is to go on and tell Ben to take Jake's clothes and run off and go on and find Madison. And I'm like, I'm sorry, like, I would not be just dusting on some other dude's clothes to go on and find Madison to just, like, role play as I'm her, like, lover. This girl hasn't earned this, but technically this is to go on and be a foreshadowing moment to help us tell how this movie is to eventually finish up here. So we also have a moment where Josh and Madison are in this car, and all of a sudden Madison is to say, Ben, and Josh is like, and so Madison's like, what, Josh? And Josh is like, well, I'm not Ben. Because Madison is going to say that every time that she is with Josh, and she tells this to Ben, that every time she is with Josh, she instead thinks that it's Ben. And that's when Ben is just like, I don't want anything to do with you, no. So Josh is to start to realize that everything that Ben had said has to be true, because Josh is to go on to say that there's no way that Ben took steroids. He doesn't need them because he is so athletic that this guy is to go on and be the Bionic Man. And that's where he cheats. Or the $6 million man. Why did I say Bionic Man? Because that's Bionic Woman. Anyways, so either way. So Josh runs off, and so what ends up happening is Madison ends up wanting to deal with Josh. So Ben goes on to his locker in and sees that Josh's bat is located in Ben's locker, oddly. Ben just chucks it off to the side because, of course, Josh is to take this bat and try to stretch his arms. We see that in the beginning of this film. So when Josh is to start dunking himself into this pool, making laps, he all of a sudden smacks into Josh's body, whose head had, I guess, been caved in. And so immediately, since Ben's fingerprints are on the bat, he is the suspect for Josh's murder. And also because of the argument that they had, Josh is to possibly, or Josh is to be dead, but Ben is to go on and possibly go away for life, it seems. But here's another thing. We also have Amy, who finds out that Ben is having an affair, a cheating moment. Because we have Ben wanting to go on and confess to Amy and tell her the truth. And Amy's saying, like, well, hey, I'm working right now. And Ben is like, well, when are you off? Like, when can we? And Amy's like, well, not right now. And so Ben's like, okay. So by the time that Ben tries to meet up with Amy at her first period, because she's going to say that she's going to ditch first period for them to talk together, by the time that Ben makes his way to meet with Amy, Amy has already been told. Amy goes on and slaps Ben and is to walk away from Ben. Ben continues to try to be at Amy's restaurant, wanting to talk to her. And Amy is looking on, is like, ugh, I hate that he's watching over me. So, come to find out, Madison is to somehow get to Ben's keys. Because Madison is to also be in Ben's house, talking to Ben's mother, and looking through photos of Ben. And Ben is to be very, like, weirded out by Madison, and Madison is to say, it's like, well, hey, like, you told me that your mother was having a birthday, and Ben is like, when did I say that? And Madison was like, oh, at the party, and Ben's like, I don't remember ever saying that. And so Ben finally tells Madison that she's coming on really strong, and that, like, they should just really just not see one another, but Madison, of course, doesn't get the hint, so on and so forth. So there was also a moment where Ben was to realize that his car was to be unclamped, because Clara was to mention how this car didn't have this clamp on, and Ben is like, oh, I must have just kind of spaced out about it. But really here, like, I think at some point Madison was to take Ben's keys to get them copied and then take Ben's car and go on and run down Amy here. So that way we again have Ben as the prime suspect, because it's his car, it's his vehicle. He must be the prime suspect here. So Amy is now in this hospital, and Ben quickly makes his way to get to Amy to finally confess to her. It's like, well, hey, like, I didn't realize that I would meet the love of my life until now. And so, like, Ben goes on and is very apologetic to Amy. Amy decides to take Ben back here somewhat. It doesn't really seem like she says anything, but that's the clear consensus. Ben is to also mention uh, that his father was to, of course, cheat on his mother, and Ben always hated him for that. So, is Ben really going on and trying to pull like the old like, well, hey, like since my dad did it and I'm just like my dad, oh, what a horrible person I've become. Is he kind of going on and sponging off the guilt because he is probably think that cheating may be hereditary, like some goofy people believe? Or maybe that trauma had somehow built into another person to realize that he should go on and do or he or she should do that same thing for whatever goofy reason. I don't know what that is. So, we now have a possibility, and Ben realizes it, that Madison is not gonna have Amy out of the way now. So Amy has to go on and finish up what she had gone on and tried to do before. When Ben was to go through Madison's closet, he realizes that Madison has this costume of a doctor, and Ben is like, aha, that's how she went on and did all the things that she did and gotten that steroid drug and all of these things because, aha, I figured it out. So, Ben realizes that Madison is going to go on and go after Amy because Ben had went home to be with his mother, and all of a sudden Ben is to go on and hear some sound, and so he goes out to see what it is, and it's some ding dong ditch person. So Ben then goes back to see that his mother is laying on the floor, and a trophy is to also be gone, and Ben is to get clocked in his head by this trophy and knocked down. So Ben is to immediately realize that, of course, Madison is going to go after Amy. So now we're going to get to all the stuff that is to be tied with Amy now here. As we had Ben go on, and when Madison was trying to go on and kill Amy in the hospital, Amy has his scalpel with her, and so all of a sudden there is this page for Jake Donnelly to appear in this certain section of the hospital. And Madison is hearing this page, and so she decides to follow this page instead of going and killing Amy. So Madison follows this page to find this guy wearing Jake Donnelly's clothes is to eventually be her brother. And Madison is to be so upset with her brother that she tries to scalpel her own brother. And Ben then grabs onto Madison and is to say all the things that has kind of happened to her, or that has happened to Ben, and that Ben is to say that he is to be a suspect for so many murders, and all the things that he has done, like, is to ruin his life. And so Ben is to go on and accumulate all this stuff with what's one more? What's one more? And so Ben goes on and is tempted to kill Madison, and Madison then confesses that she was to do all of that, and it was all for them. And Ben then pushes Madison away from him, saying, like, man, you are really stupid, because Madison then goes on is to realize there's a camcorder that confesses to all of her crimes. Because we, of course, had Ben, who had this one detective who was like, well, hey, like, this bat had your fingerprints on it. Like, we've been through this stuff before with, of course, Ben having drugs. We even have Carla, Ben's mother, turning on him and saying, like, well, hey, like, this is familiar to all the things leading up to you taking drugs before. And Ben is like, I'm not taking drugs. Like, I'm not doing this. Like, this is not me. This is someone else effing up my life. So, we have this detective that is to want to go on here and apologize to Ben, and if all of this checks out, then he'll go on and do so. So they end up going on to take this girl to jail, and during this railroad crossing, Madison ends up killing these guys and is going after Amy again. To where Ben is to run off to find that Amy is to not be at this hospital, so now he's trying to figure out where she could possibly be. So, Ben is to get this page from Madison saying, like, hey, would you like a dip? Having Madison giving Ben a clue of where she will be, so Ben races off to make his way to the pool, where now Ben is to then realize that Amy is strapped to this chair, and Madison is yelling, like, you told me you loved me! Ma! That is, of course, the big line of this movie. You told me you loved me! I know that you love me. Tell me you love me. So, Madison is to go on and throw Amy into this pool, and now Ben is to dive into this pool, and he tries to first try to figure out how to save Amy, but then Ben needs air, so he pops back up, and while that's going on, Madison has this huge pool stick where she's just smacking into this pool, and Ben's like, oh my god, trying to avoid the damage of this stick to get knocked unconscious and killed here. So Ben then goes on to figure out a way to, because he can't pick up the chair in the pool, it's too heavy. So instead, Ben goes on and is to figure out a way to uncuff Amy, I think by using the bobby pins from before. And Ben then is to try to retrieve Amy, and when Ben sees that Madison is still with this stick trying to smack away, Ben grabs the stick from Madison, pulling her into the pool, having us again realize that Madison supposedly still can't swim now, even when she was briefly taught by Ben how to float. But still, Madison is like kicking and flinging, and she's eventually getting to the point where we still have to realize she can't swim. So Ben is taking Amy's body and trying to like plop it over the pool, and Ben is trying to hold Amy's hands down so Ben can eventually sling Amy's body over this pool and try to do CPR, but it's not the pumping the chest CPR. He's just breathing through her mouth. And so Amy ends up getting revived here, and when Ben and Amy kind of look up, they just see Madison, who's drowned in this pool. And that honestly should have been the way that this movie ended. But instead, we then turn around and just see a swim meet that is going on, and all of a sudden we see some other rando swim guy to find Ben in the stands just kind of watching what could have been. And then after this swim meet is over, Ben goes on to be in this truck with Amy and kisses her hand, and the movie just ends. Man, I took almost an hour to say all of that, and it's an hour and 24-minute movie. Good God, is there so many things going on in this film. but I'm going to try to get the heck out of here. So goodbye, everybody. I'm going to try to get out of here quickly. I apologize for how long this took. But with that said, I'm just going to quickly try to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.